The pain hit Brandon Keller before he hit the ground. He hadn't even seen the drone until it clipped the edge of the scaffolding he was on, sending him tumbling 3 stories down onto the uneven metal plating of the construction site. One moment he was aligning a solar panel on the outer hull of the Earth-Mars Transport Initiative's orbital way station, and the next, real stars, not metaphorical ones, blurred into a dizzying spiral as the air was knocked clean from his lungs. The crash echoed through the chamber while the white-suited figures above scrambled to their feet. Brandon, stay down. He blinked hard. His right forearm was bent the wrong way, a jagged piece of bone poking against the inside of his skin. His left leg screamed when he tried to move it. He stopped trying. A flurry of boots and panicked voices surrounded him. One of the med team knelt beside him, pressing something cold to his neck. There was a hiss. Then darkness. When he woke, it was not in any hospital he recognized. Everything around him was glossy and pale blue, the walls curving upward like the inside of a seashell. The ceiling glowed softly, casting a light with no apparent source. There was no beeping, no drip, no familiar scent of antiseptic. Just the low hum of distant machinery and the faint, rhythmic pulse of something alive. A figure hovered nearby. Tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that bent in slight but unfamiliar angles. Its skin was smooth and the color of ash, with a head that tapered upward like a candle flame. It wore no clothes, but a sash-like device wrapped around its torso, blinking gently. "You are awake," it said, voice translated smoothly through a small hovering orb near the ceiling. "This is satisfactory." Brandon swallowed. His mouth was dry. "Where the hell am I?" "You were transported to the Arkali Medical Array aboard Observation Vessel 17. Your injuries were critical. We intervened to preserve." He tried to raise his arm. Pain arced through his shoulder and ribs. "You broke 2 ribs, your left femur and right radius. There was internal bleeding. You would have expired without intervention." "Then why do I still feel like I got hit by a train?" "You are being sustained. Your body is in recovery. Your natural pain response has not been suppressed to allow for accurate neurological mapping." Brandon looked down. His arm was encased in a translucent shell, glowing faintly. His leg had a similar covering. No casts. No bandages. Just this alien tech clinging to his skin like a second layer. A different alien entered, shorter, with a flatter face and deep-set eyes. It carried a device that looked like a cross between a scanner and a garden hose. "This one is Dr. Vell," the orb translated. "He will begin the tissue realignment." Brandon's stomach tightened. "Wait. Realignment?" Dr. Vell nodded and raised the device. A beam of pale yellow light stretched out from the nozzle and hovered over Brandon's arm. "Hold on, what's that going to do?" "Restore the original structure of your limb by molecular reinforcement. The procedure is painless." The beam touched his skin. Brandon flinched. It was painless. Technically. But the sensation was wrong. Like cold water rushing through a hot pipe, the inside of his bone vibrated as if it were being spun in place. He gritted his teeth as it traveled up his forearm. Vell paused, tilting his head. "Discomfort. More than discomfort. That thing's messing with the inside of my bones. We are repairing." "No, you're..." "Look, can you just stop for a second?" The beam retracted. Brandon exhaled shakily. "I'm not some test subject. You got a med bay with normal tools? Like gauze? Stitches? A splint?" Vell blinked slowly. "Primitive methods. They are obsolete. I don't care. I'm human. I want human treatment. You have a way to reach my medical team on the station? That is inefficient. We have superior methods." Brandon sat upright with effort, pain slicing through his side. "Then call it inefficient." "But I want a proper cast. I want stitches, not laser beams or bone melting rays. Just give me the damn basics." The taller alien approached. "You reject our methods. I'm not trying to insult you. But my body's not wired like yours. I don't know what that thing's doing to my nerves, but it's not working. I've had broken bones before. I know what healing feels like. This isn't it." Vell turned to the taller one. "It is requesting rudimentary earth medicine." There was a pause. The translator orb pulsed. "That is allowable." Brandon collapsed back against the cushion, relief washing over him despite the pain. Within the hour, a synthetic white bed was wheeled into his room. A compartment slid out from the wall, revealing a sterile tray of tools, scissors, gauze rolls, antiseptic, a curved needle, and what looked like a casting sleeve. Vel watched silently as Brandon adjusted himself. "You were trained in your own medical procedures?" "I've patched myself up a few times. Wilderness rescue. Did a tour in Antarctica during my 20s. We had to handle things without hospitals sometimes. I'm not a doctor, but I can close a wound." He motioned to his arm. "This one's clean. Just a deep gash. No breaks. I'll do it myself." Vel stepped back, silently observing. The translator orb followed Brandon's every movement. He poured antiseptic over the wound, wincing as the sting hit. He threaded the needle slowly, hands shaking but steady enough. Each stitch was careful, deliberate. He tied off the last one, applied gauze and wrapped it tight. Vel leaned in. "That process is slow." "Yeah, but I know it's done right. The pain's familiar. I can live with that." He didn't say what he was really thinking, how the alien tech made his skin crawl, how the painless procedures felt like being turned inside out without warning, how he needed to feel the sting and pinch of healing to trust it was real. The leg was more complicated. The femur break had been stabilized by the alien's initial intervention, but Brandon insisted on a hard cast afterward. It took time for the aliens to fabricate one using their materials, but eventually they produced something strikingly similar to fiberglass. He guided them through the fitting process, sweat pouring down his face from the effort. By the end of the day, he was exhausted. Dr. Vel tilted his head. "Your species chooses pain when comfort is available." Brandon chuckled weakly. "No. We just like knowing what's happening inside us. We're weird that way." Recovery didn't happen overnight. Over the next 6 weeks, Brandon remained aboard the alien vessel, slowly regaining strength. The aliens monitored his progress with clinical fascination, periodically offering their advanced treatments again. He declined every time. He began to walk again with the help of a cane, modified by the aliens to suit his height and weight. The femur took as long as it would on Earth, just over a month before he could bear weight, and another few weeks before he could walk unassisted. Each time he managed a new step, Vel recorded it. "You are slower than our projections." "Yeah, well, I'm not a projection. I'm a guy with a busted leg and a stubborn streak." The aliens never seemed angry, just confused. Every time he laughed through the pain or gritted his teeth instead of taking their pain suppressants, they watched like anthropologists studying a strange, self-inflicted ritual. One day, as Brandon sat near the observation window, watching the stars crawl past, the taller alien joined him. "You repaired yourself with needle and thread. More or less. Your resilience is inefficient, but impressive." Brandon grinned. "I'll take that as a compliment." "You may." They sat in silence for a while. Eventually, the alien said, "Your transport back to Earth leaves in 2 rotations. We will miss studying you. I'll miss confusing the hell out of you." Later, when he returned to Earth, his cast came off in a small clinic in Arizona. The doctor, a woman named Carla Jensen, examined the leg and nodded. "Healing's clean. You did this without advanced regen tech." Brandon shrugged. "Felt better doing it the old way." She raised an eyebrow. "You're either stubborn or crazy. Bit of both." She smiled faintly, then handed him a small envelope. Inside was a photo, a still taken from the alien vessel, showing him mid-stitch with Dr. Vel watching in the background. On the back, a note in careful handwriting read, "The inefficient method worked. Your kind is strange, but durable." Brandon kept it tucked in his wallet for years. Brandon was halfway through carving a chess set out of meal trays when the door dilated open with its usual hiss, and Dr. Vel floated in, literally this time, suspended by a ring of soft blue light beneath his feet. "Your balance has returned," Vel said without preamble. "You now walk unassisted." "Why do you still use the cane?" Brandon looked up from the rook he was shaping with a disposable scalpel and blew off a curl of plastic dust. "Because I'm not an idiot." Vel blinked both sets of eyelids. "Clarify." I'm not rushing, Brandon said. Just because I can hobble doesn't mean I should. You want the femur to heal right, you keep the pressure light until the bone's dense again. He tapped the cane against the floor for emphasis. This helps me not do something dumb. Like trip on your slippery floors. Vel studied him for a beat, then turned his attention to the half-finished chessboard spread across the table. You are fabricating symbolic combat pieces. It's a game, Brandon said. It's how humans simulate strategy. Keeps the brain sharp. You are using nutritional trays. I asked for wood. You gave me polymer. The nutritional trays are not designed for sculpture. Neither was my leg. Yet here we are. Vel leaned in to examine a knight that looked more like a lopsided llama. Your dexterity has returned. That is favorable. Brandon set down the scalpel and cracked his knuckles. Takes time. And patience. Your methods continue to confound the medical committee. That's probably mutual. He stood slowly, favoring his left side, and walked a few steps toward the panoramic window. Beyond it, stars drifted like sediment in dark water. You ever been to Earth? Brandon asked. My species is not adapted for planetary gravity. Shame. We've got mountains. Trees. Gravity that hugs you like a clingy ant. Vel made a warbling sound that Brandon had come to associate with mild curiosity. You speak with metaphor often, because it's more fun than being literal. There is a summit of medical delegates arriving at midday. They wish to observe. Brandon turned. Observe what? You. The committee deems your recovery an anomaly. Because I didn't let you microwave my bones? Because you insisted on regressive healing protocols and still achieved functional mobility. Brandon leaned against the table and tilted his head. Let me guess, they think I cheated. They suspect your biology may possess undocumented regenerative traits. Brandon laughed once, short and dry. Nope. Just grit and gauze. Vel's translator orb hesitated before speaking. Grit is particulate mineral. Gauze is a porous textile. Neither explains accelerated tissue cohesion. You ever heard of stubbornness? That is not a medical term. It should be. For hours later, the observation lounge felt more like a job interview conducted inside a fish tank. Brandon sat in the center of a crescent-shaped platform, his chair slightly elevated. Around him, 7 alien delegates occupied translucent pods, each shaped like an upright tear. Their forms varied wildly. One resembled a stack of floating discs, another shimmered as if made of fog. All of them stared without blinking. A low tone signaled the beginning of the session. You may begin locomotion, Vel said from beside him. Brandon stood, slowly and deliberately, then began walking the perimeter of the platform. No limp. No wince. Just a steady, cautious gait. After 2 full circuits, he stopped. One of the delegates emitted a clicking series of tones. The orb translated. Why did you decline cellular knitting? I didn't want to feel hollow. Another pulse from the fog-shaped delegate. You preferred physical discomfort over optimized recovery? Pain isn't just pain, Brandon said. It tells you when to stop, when to push, when something's wrong. Take that away and you might heal wrong without even knowing. The delegate's chamber flickered faintly. You administered your own subdermal closure. With a curved needle and thread, yeah. Without visual assistance? I used a mirror. Another delegate, the one shaped like a flattened pyramid, leaned forward. You chose to risk infection. I chose what I knew would work. I've stitched open wounds in snowstorms. This was easier. More clicks. A different tone this time. Did you not fear permanent impairment? Brandon crossed his arms. Sure, but I feared the alternative more. The flattened delegate tilted. Explain. When you can't feel what's happening in your body, you lose trust in it. I didn't want to just wake up healed and wonder if it was real. I needed to know I earned it. Pause stretched. Then the fog delegate chimed again. You conducted bone realignment using only tactile feedback? No, Brandon said. You guys said it. But I rejected the nanoseal or whatever it was. I waited for callus formation, then reinforced with a cast. Vel added. He fabricated a rigid support shell with our materials. Another delegate, previously silent, released a series of harmonic tones. You relied on historical data rather than advanced diagnostics. I relied on my own experience, which for me is more reliable. The flattened one again. You rejected the suppression of inflammatory response. Because inflammation's not always bad. It's part of the process. The foggy delegate dimmed slightly. You intentionally prolonged recovery. I intentionally made sure it healed right. A long silence followed. Then the floating disc delegate rotated once. You exhibited agency over your own treatment despite lacking formal credentials. I know my body better than anyone else does. Your resistance to foreign intervention is statistically anomalous. Maybe. Or maybe you're just not used to people saying no. Another hum. You have restored full function without synthetic augmentation. Brandon flexed his hand. Still me. Just a bit creakier. The delegates conferred in a series of overlapping tones, untranslatable. Brandon waited, arms crossed, until one of them finally spoke again. We request a demonstration of fine motor control. Brandon picked up the half-finished bishop he'd brought and resumed carving, letting the blade shape the curve of the cowl. You favor primitive tools. They're honest. The fog delegate pulsed again. You will be documented as a case of non-integrated recovery. Sounds fancy. It is rare. Good. Later that cycle, as the delegates departed, Vel remained behind. You were not dismissed. Brandon shrugged. Didn't feel like leaving yet. You have no further procedures. I know. You refused advanced intervention and still achieved measurable recovery. Brandon leaned against the window again, watching the stars. You keep saying that like it's magic. It is improbable. Not from where I'm standing. Vel hovered closer. The delegates have requested your participation in a comparative study. Meaning, they wish to observe how your species responds to various traumas without interference. Brandon turned slowly. You want to break more bones? No. Only to observe when they are broken naturally. Brandon narrowed his eyes. You're not dropping me down a flight of stairs. Unethical. Glad we agree. Vel hesitated. You are. Not what we expected. Brandon looked at his hands, then at the makeshift chessboard. Neither are you. He picked up the rook and set it on the board. Your move. The light in the Arcali recovery wing never changed, always that soft, sourceless glow that made Brandon feel like he was trapped inside a giant LED egg. He hadn't seen a sunrise in nearly 2 months, and the only thing keeping him grounded in time was the routine. Eat whatever passed for breakfast, move through a sequence of stretches and assisted walks, check in with Vel, and then return to his room to whittle chess pieces or reread the same 3 Earth novels the aliens had managed to digitize from a backup server. But this morning, if it could be called that, his door opened at an unusual interval. Not with the punctual hum he'd come to expect from the observation team, but with a stuttering groan like it had been forced. Vel entered first, but not alone. Behind him floated a being twice his size, composed of translucent overlapping plates that slid over each other like scales made of fogged glass. It had no visible face, just a cluster of thin tendrils where a neck might have been. This is Director Sarah, Vel said. She oversees the Interspecies Trauma Study Division. The director's tendrils shifted slightly, then retracted against her torso. I've read the full account, she said through a translator fixed to her thorax. You did not request augmentation even once. Brandon adjusted the support under his casted leg and leaned forward on the cane. Nope. You refused analgesics, regenerative cell matrices, even nerve insulation. There isn't a prize for listing everything I turned down. There is now, she said. We've compiled a behavioral profile based on your recovery. It's being used to re-evaluate how we approach trauma treatment for non-collective species. Non-collective? Species that prioritize individual agency over procedural optimization. Brandon scratched his chin. I think you just called me stubborn again. Not inaccurately, she said, but usefully. He gestured to the stool near the curved wall. You came all the way here to tell me I'm a case study? No, she replied. I came because you've caused a procedural issue. I'm listening. You've become a reference point, she said. We now have civilian patients requesting to heal like the human. Brandon blinked. You're kidding. Some are demanding physical therapy without enhancement. Others have begun refusing sensory suppressants. That's not what I was trying to do, Brandon said. I wasn't protesting your tech. I just wanted to be sure I could trust the way I was healing. Yes, Sarah said, but your actions were observed, and now they are being imitated. Brandon leaned back in the chair, exhaling. All right, so what do you want from me? We want to know what to do next. Vel stepped forward. You are the first patient to complete recovery under manual methods. The committee has no protocol for what follows. You're asking me to write your discharge papers? In a sense, Sarah said. What do humans do when they finish recovering? Brandon tilted his head. We go home. There was a pause. That is not an option, Vel said. Your transport departed 9 days ago. I wasn't told. You were not ambulatory at the time. Brandon rubbed his eyes with one hand. So what, am I stuck here floating in a space hospital forever? No, Sarah said. But we require a resolution for your case. You are stable. Your musculoskeletal integrity is restored. But your continued presence is creating procedural inconsistencies. Brandon stood slowly, testing his weight. The cane barely bore any load. All right. Then let's finish it. Sarah's tendrils twitched again. How do humans conclude treatment? We get a final checkup. Maybe a scan. Then someone signs a form that says we're fit to go. And then we walk out the door. Vel and Sarah exchanged a glance, or what passed for one among beings without visible eyes. Several hours later, Brandon sat in a diagnostic chamber that looked like a high-end tanning bed. It hummed softly as a panel passed over his body, mapping his bone density and joint alignment. The results printed onto a flexible sheet that curled slightly at the edges. Vel examined the data. Bone calcification is complete. Ligament tension is within standard range. No abnormal scarring. Brandon rolled his shoulder experimentally. Range of motion? 93% of baseline. I'll take it. He stood and walked the length of the room unaided, then stopped and turned without favoring either leg. Sarah watched in silence. Then that concludes verification. Brandon faced her. So? She extended a flat device toward him. This is your release file. It includes a full record of your treatment and a comparative study of your methods. He hesitated before taking it. What happens to the others? The ones who want to do it my way. We will not forbid it, she said. But we will advise them of the risks. Good. Then we're done. There is one final formality. A third figure entered the chamber. It was smaller than the others, with skin like smoked glass and limbs that bent in gentle arcs. It held a folded garment, customary for discharged patients to receive a parting uniform. Brandon unfolded it. It resembled a tunic, but cut shorter, with a sash that bore a symbol he hadn't seen before. What's the symbol? It means unassisted completion, Sarah said. He snorted. I'm not wearing this. It is not required. Merely offered. Brandon tucked it under his arm anyway. Transport? He asked. There is a diplomatic vessel headed to a neutral port. From there, a civilian shuttle can return you to Earth. When? 3 rotations. Brandon felt something loosen in his chest, like a knot finally untied. He looked around the chamber one last time. The walls, once so alien, now felt faintly familiar. The light no longer bothered him. He'd even stopped noticing the lack of sharp corners. You know, he said, when I first woke up here, I thought I was dead. Your vitals were nearly unrecoverable, Vel said. Yeah, I gathered. But I couldn't tell what was real. The way you heal people. So fast. Too fast. Like nothing ever happened. Vel tilted his head. You prefer evidence of damage? I prefer to understand what happened to me. If I can't feel the healing, how do I know I'm not just patched together wrong? That is an unfamiliar concern. Brandon smiled. Welcome to humanity. Sarah approached and extended one of her tendrils. Brandon took it like a hand. You have altered our approach to multi-species recovery, she said. Not by teaching, but by being observed. Sometimes the best lessons are accidental. She retracted the tendril and nodded once. We will remember. 3 days later, Brandon sat aboard the diplomatic transport, watching the stars shift past as the vessel turned toward the port station. The cast was gone, the cane packed away. His arm felt stiff in the morning, but it moved like it used to. No buzzing, no artificial smoothness. Just tendons and bone and everything earned. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the folded photo the one Vel had given him. He looked at the image of himself, mid-stitch, eyes tired and jaws set. Behind him, the aliens watched, faces unreadable but attentive. He slid the photo into a small compartment in the armrest. Then he leaned back, closed his eyes, and finally, after all this time, let himself rest.